Means, all right, we are live on the channel. What's going on, everybody? Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We are back with another Conscious Approach video. As usual, my name is JV Wins, joined by my boy Dogon SS. And it's funny that I'm talking about this first, or that we are talking about this first, because we're both from Miami, Florida originally, but I am currently based here. And Rolling Loud was this past weekend, and we had a bit of a kerfluffle at Rolling Loud. And this kerfluffle featured one of our favorite people that we like to talk about, Brittany Renner. She provides a lot of content for the channel. So this situation has been going viral in the aftermath or the conclusion of this year's Rolling Loud. And she basically assaulted a festival goer. I know, in terms of the grand scheme of things, we wouldn't necessarily characterize it as assault, but that's what it is, because if this happens and an individual wants to press charges, it would be categorized as assault. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with calling a spade a spade. And there was a clip. The clip went viral all over social media, TikTok, Instagram, and all of that good stuff, where Brittany Renner basically threw water in a guy's face because she didn't appreciate something that was said to her. So we'll go ahead and play this, and then we'll talk about what happened.
Are you gonna put it on me? Are you gonna put it on me? Are you gonna put it on me? I'm not scared. Are you gonna put it on me? Are you gonna put it on me? Let's go viral. Let's go viral. Come on, let's go.
That's what he wants. Baby, that's what he wants.
Fantastic sword, baby.
Whoa, man. So yeah, he was getting fresh with her. She was getting fresh back. He said something she didn't like, and she threw water in his face. And what was with those other chicks also throwing water at him? Like, I don't know what that was. I feel as though I should say this. Apparently, what set her off, and this is alleged, is this guy mentioned PJ Washington in some kind of way. And that's what set her off. Now, I have searched for different angles and versions of that video on the interwebs. I have not found any. That's pretty much all that I found. And in that clip, I don't hear anything that even relates to, I don't hear anything that sounds like PJ Washington being said by this guy. So I cannot confirm nor deny that, but that's apparently the speculation. Bottom line, however, is whether he said it or not, she still felt emboldened enough and protected enough to throw water in this guy's face. So, Brittany Renner, once again, living her hot girl summer, doing her thing out here. She gets talked about a lot. She's one of these social media influencer type personalities who is known for leveraging her sexuality for attention and a career path. I don't think that that's unfair to say. And she was a host. She was like some kind of interview host at this year's festival. For whom? I don't know. I don't know what platform or outlet she was a host for. I'm not sure. But that was why she was there, or that's the primary capacity in which she was there. And then in the midst of doing that, there was this dust up. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but I'm penny for them at this time.
Honestly, I just think it's disgusting behavior. I think it's egregious, shameful, abominable. I can go on.
yeah.
And honestly, just the and I'm sure you're going to speak on the double standard thing here of what's going on, but I'll just more or less speak of public figure behavior, role model behavior, because that's generally the lane I stick in. And the cause for concern for anybody that is an internet troll for a profession, as Brittany Renner is, and the people who idolize it. And I just really think that this behavior it speaks to housewives culture. Pouring drinks in somebody's face is right up reality TV show alley. And how else do you resolve a dust up without just splashing a drink in your adversary's face? I really think that this was immature on her behalf. But I'm speaking on the aspect of it being shameful and distasteful and role model from the aspect of people who live in the real world. Now, for the aspiring thoughts and aspiring mega thoughts that are out there ingesting this madness, she saw nothing wrong. They would see nothing wrong from this type of behavior. Brittany Renner was defending herself, as she should have. And, for people that think like that, I really don't know what more to say than that your thought patterns are also shameful and should be rectified to what normal people think like. But how would you feel about this exchange?
Yeah, you correctly predicted that I am going to bring up what I believe to be a double standard in play here. I believe that if the shoe was on the other foot and that was a guy tossing water into a woman's face, or let's just keep it with the people involved. Let's just switch the positions, right? So let's say that guy was working Rolling Loud and Brittany Renner was in the crowd and they started getting fresh with one another and he got offended by something that she said and he threw water in her face. I believe that he would be facing assault charges. Now, I don't believe that Brittany Renner is having charges pressed against her by this guy, and that's another part of the problem because a lot of us men, I'm not going to get on the soapbox, but I think it's unfortunate that a lot of modern men, we talk about modern women. We coin the term modern women whenever we have conversations like this, talking about the nature of women these days, right? So, my belief is that there's always two sides to the same coin. So if we're going to talk about modern women, we should also talk about modern men. I think that's completely fair or completely reasonable. And I think modern men, in part due to the way that they have been brought up in the types of environments and households they've been brought up, and also in part to the mind control entertainment that they've been exposed to, have been relegated to being bitch made. I think there's a lot of bitch made men out here these days. And I think that the climate of bitch made men has contributed to the epidemic that is a man being treated in this way, but still feeling as though he should not press any kind of charges or exact any sort of action that is going to make a person in Brittany Renner's position be held accountable for that type of behavior. And honestly, I don't know which is the bigger issue, the fact that Brittany Renner did it, or the fact that this guy is probably going to go along with his life not feeling as though Brittany Renner should be held accountable for this behavior. And why does he not care or want her to be held accountable for this kind of behavior? Because he wants to smash, and because he would like to smash, and because he envisions himself one day being able to smash, if not her, then a Brittany Renner proxy, some woman like her, some woman who is of her ilk. And when you're a slave to vagina, as a lot of our fellow men are these days, they will let a lot of things slide, like getting water splashed in your face and being embarrassed in this capacity and not doing anything about it. So that's the primary thing that I took away from it. The double standard, is present. I do believe that. But moreover, so many of us as men have been made into such bitch-made empty vessels of just buffoonery and being slaves to vagina. And this is what you get. When you're a slave to vagina, you will allow a woman such as her to splash you in the face, and you can just keep it moving thinking that you got the upper hand, but really you're just embarrassed. Or rather you embarrass yourself.
And I hear that and so compartmentalizing it, he embarrassed himself to us. But in his world and the troll world, this guy's going to flip, parlay this. He's going to have interviews. This guy, he wanted to go viral. And let's go viral. Yeah. Let's go viral. Yeah. And again, bro, we're dealing with new humans here. Yeah. New humans that have been have been cultivated into being these viral-seeking stimuli receptors. They're just out there. They're just out there. Just give me anything that'll go viral. Give me anything. And then and she gave him his viral moment. And so this splash that you, for those of you that are looking at this, like, what the hell's going on in that image? That's a bottle of water.
Yeah.
That's a bottle of water that Brittany Renner splashed in this man's face. Now, in our world, he's embarrassed himself. But in this guy's world, oh man, he's telling all of his little friends
he won.
He's got a dub.
Yeah,
he's got a dub. And I would just say, more or less, and this is a lesson to be learned from everybody here, not just for the mega thoughts here. This is for everybody. Don't give people the viral moment that they seek, because the only person that loses in that situation is not the person that you showed up, but it's you for participating and buying into the fact that you stoop to their level. So I think Brittany Renner here, she's the one who takes this L. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, I feel you. I don't know if Brittany Renner takes the L. I hear what you're saying. I do. But, I'm looking at Brittany Renner's Instagram. She has 4.7 million followers. Brittany Renner.
I forgot. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I don't think Brittany Renner's taking the L. I think if anybody's taking I believe both of them, because of what you just described in terms of the culture that we're in, they're both probably ancillarily benefiting.
Yes.
However, I think Brittany Renner is probably benefiting to a greater degree, because not only is she able to play this to the masses of zombies who follow her and who aspire to emulate her lifestyle and her behavior, but she's also emboldened by the hot girl summer culture, which says that it is socially acceptable and even a redeeming quality to be able to shame and embarrass men. So I think she's winning more than anybody. But I hear what you're saying. I didn't think of that angle. They both probably are winning, but I don't know who this dude is. So the mere fact that I know who she is and I don't know who this guy is, he's winning in his relative state of obscurity. But I just find the whole situation disgusting.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
we'll find out his name next week, though.
I'm sure we will, man. You dudes are so bitch made. All right, we'll move on. We'll move on. Next up, we're going to talk about the WNBA, but we're going to talk about the WNBA within the context of comic Bill Burr. So we're not going to. So we were. Melanie King put out a video, and I'll put a link to the description of her video in the description of this video, where she was talking about fallacies with respect to the narrative of equal pay for women, and how women don't actually practice what they preach. They like to just run their mouths. But in terms of the way these things actually play out, women aren't actually putting their money where their mouth is. They just like to talk about this idealistic world in which women get equal pay, that the WNBA players are paid as much as the NBA players, that female soccer players are paid as much as the male soccer players. But in actuality, in terms of the nuts and bolts, the supporters of the product, and furthermore, the females who support this stuff, because these are women making these claims about the need for equal pay and equal treatment and equal everything, right? So if you're about that life, then one would assume that you support the very thing that you believe should be treated equitably. And, Melanie King was basically using Bill Burr's stand-up routine. And again, I'll put a link in the description of this video to that so that y'all can see what we mean. But the point is, Bill Burr was in his comedy set talking about why, in fact, there isn't much support for these platforms or programs, and why there is no room for equal pay. And it basically all boils down to the support for the product and what it generates. So in order for, if you want to see some context, you can go ahead and click the link in the video to check that out. We don't want to get hit with no copyrights or nothing like that. But just in the grand scheme of things, what do you make of the false narrative, the fallacies, equal pay, WNBA, all of that good stuff?
Honestly, I just think it's sad. Got to be honest with you, it's a bit sad, and sad from the aspect on the angle of that they continue to bark up this tree where, again, there's no facts supporting anything that they're claiming. Yeah, I get it, equal pay, but at the same time, when you're playing in a revenue generated sport, I don't know what more you can argue about. The Bill Burr set, as we mentioned, you guys can check out the link. It's Bill Burr, man. So he's going to give it to you raw and uncut. And so he was letting the feminists have it. Not so much the everyday basketball girl that's out there just trying to live out her dreams. And yeah, she hears it in the locker room that we don't get paid the same much as the other guys, but deep down, she knows why. And she's just okay with just playing NBA basketball and playing at the highest level that she can play at with women. And so I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about the feminists. And I think Bill Burr is addressing those feminists that are just so hell-bent on this equality equality agenda, that they just want equality across the board, uniform equality, where when it actually gets down to its practical, like you said, nuts and bolts to it, it doesn't equate. It's not scalable. It doesn't make sense. And so, and then once these feminists build these straw man arguments, they get completely torn apart. It makes them look stupider. So it doesn't benefit any these feminist women out here that are just out here holding the flag, the loud minority out here really just making it worse for all of them. And then when Bill Burr or anybody else comes out and gives statements like he did, just spitting straight facts, it makes him look insensitive. It makes all of this other stuff, within the social sphere.
Right.
But in actuality, nah, man, he's just giving it to him straight as he should. So, but yeah, I just really think that the feminists really hurt, WNBA. I don't think everybody that's in the WNBA is a feminist. I don't think every fan of the WNBA is a feminist. I think there's a large majority, but at the same time, I don't think they all are. And so I do feel sorry for the ones that are out there just genuinely trying to hoop and just enjoy and live their dreams, but they keep having all of these talking points that throw them under the bus and have them looking kind of silly. So I don't know how you feel about it.
I hear you. I think unfortunately there's a large segment of modern feminists who are bad faith actors, and who they pray tell to speak on behalf of all women, and all women aren't on what they're on. So there's a lot, like, for example, there are a lot of women who are perfectly comfortable being in a relationship and taking on a submissive role and being with a partner who is a heterosexual masculine man who takes on the leadership role. There's a large segment of women who are okay with that and who don't feel as though, because that's the type of relationship that they're in, that it somehow strips them of their individuality or their womanhood or their individual agency. But you'll have a lot of these loudmouth feminists who speak on behalf of all women, who try to say a man shouldn't control you, as if being in a relationship with roles automatically denotes that you're being controlled, and who say that if anything, you should be the dominant one, you should be the leader, but really you don't need men, don't need relationships, and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of women who don't agree with that stuff, but they're too busy living life to spend a whole lot of time on social media and in videos complaining about everything. And the ironic thing about that is a lot of those women who are loudest are also single. So it's interesting that you want to be that you want to tell other women who are in relationships that they're happy with how they should feel about their relationship when you yourself are not in one. So yeah, it's just complete frank. It's not hypocrisy. It's just a lot of people who are, abjectly miserable with the course in which their life is taken, and they are using their soapbox as a bully pulpit to try and bring other women into their own world of misery because misery loves company. So yeah, there's a lot of bad faith actors running around with these modern feminists. But in terms of this particular subject, I'm with Bill Burr on this. And, I took the liberty of doing some research because far be it for me to give my opinion. So I'll just go ahead and give you some numbers real quick, right? So you have a lot of people out here, such as the women who Bill Burr described in his set, these feminists who scream about equal pay and equal treatment. So let's keep it squarely within the realm of basketball. Let's talk about the NBA versus the WNBA. Okay, so this is information that I got from World Sports Network. I will put a link to this article in the description of this video so that you can see that I'm not making this up. WNBA revenue, and this is data as of 2019. NBA revenue $7.4 billion with a B. WNBA $60 million. Average salaries in the NBA $6.4 million. Average salaries in the WNBA $71,635. Ticket price for an NBA game average is $89. Average ticket price for a WNBA game is $17.42. Average viewership, and this is the most important thing. This is basically how I'm going to make my point here. Average viewership, 15.14 million viewers. NBA, for the WNBA, 231,000 viewers. Average attendance, 18,000 in the NBA. WNBA, 6,768. Okay, so let's go back to this average viewership thing, right? So I did some more research, and the latest data shows that, and this is data from frontofficesports.com. WNBA viewership, women. So this is women. Women make up 1/3 of NBA viewers. Women make up 1/3 of all NBA viewers. Women make up 75% of all WNBA viewers. So let's just do some simple math there. Let's do 15.14 million, which is 15,140,000. And let's divide that by 33 because that's roughly 1/3. Basically, we have 45,878 people, give or take, who are women who pay attention to the NBA on an annual basis. Now let's take 75% of 231,000. Okay, and basically you have, let's see here. Divided by 231 grand, multiply that by 100. You got about 3,246 of those viewers, WNBA, 75% of 231,000. That's an average, right? So there's a clear discrepancy. And the point that Melanie King was trying to make when she was talking about women not putting their money where their mouth is 30% of 15.14 million is a much greater number than 75% of 231,000. The raw numbers are far greater apart than anything. Like, that's a huge discrepancy. So if these modern feminists were really about that life and really wanted to encourage this idea of equitable treatment and equal pay, they would do whatever they can to see to it that that gap was not as wide as it is. But what the data shows us is more women pay attention to the NBA than the WNBA, which therefore begs the question, and this is the more deeper existential question, why do we as human beings like the NBA more than the WNBA? I don't have an answer to that question, and you know who else doesn't have an answer to that question? Feminists. They don't know. They just want to complain about the things that they are dissatisfied with, even though the data suggests that they have nothing to complain about, because what brings in the money is what's going to get the most of. Like the NBA brings in the majority of the revenue, therefore NBA players make the most money. More people watch the NBA. The NBA has greater ratings. More people buy season tickets. All of that stuff. So the NBA is a greater revenue generator, and furthermore, the NBA actually subsidizes the WNBA. Like the WNBA is a subsidiary of the NBA. The NBA pays to keep the WNBA lights on. So in talking about equal pay for, WNBA players or even at large women athletes, I think the better question is, number one, why don't more women care more about women's sports, especially women team sports? Because statistically, more women care about male team sports than women. Answer those. If you can answer those questions, you might be able to address this issue of equal pay. But until then, you're kind of complaining and barking up a tree that you ought not be barking on.
And that's what I'm saying, that the feminists, they create this argument that's full of holes, and they're so loud about it that anybody's critique or just their entertainment of the argument, it did just tear it to shreds, and then it just makes them look sillier as a whole. And there's WNBA players that are loud saying it. I know it. I've heard them say it. So it's not just feminists hollering from the bleachers. So there's players that are saying this, but at the same time, I mean, what do you want to get subsidized more?
Right.
I mean, you're sounding like the Black community. So you want more handouts? We already gave you some. And it's like, hey, man, it is what it is. Hey, make it on your own.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I've been that guy. I've said it before on this thing. Say it again. All right. You got a smaller ball. Right? You shoot. Your 3-pointer is closer in. Lower that rim, man. Lower that rim. I guarantee you it'll intensify stuff, because it's deeper than just us watching women dunk.
Yeah.
It's women not wanting to get dunked on. It's women wanting to dunk on other women. It's going to create a different competitive edge that we haven't seen women get involved in. So I really think on a smaller tier, the WNBA is too prideful to do so. But if somebody's bold enough, and I think they would be, to create a league or create a scenario, kind of like the Big Three, where you allow women to hoop just like how they normally hoop, but the rim is a little bit further down, and they can start like basing on each other, just so people can see it. And hey, I actually like this. I would actually, because women have their own form of athleticism. There'll be women gliding. It's like, oh damn, I didn't know she can glide. It's like, they've got stuff. Just give them the format to allow them to exhibit their athleticism. So
I agree. I think one of the tragedies when it comes to like male-female interaction, and whether it's sports, whether it's relationships, the biggest disservice that we do to ourselves in these types of conversations is treating it as though men and women are the same. It's like we need to stop it with this charade. We are not the same. We're different animals. We're different creatures. We're not the same. So like female basketball should be different because we're not the same. Women do not have 45-inch vertical leaps. Women for the most part aren't 6'6", 250. Like they're not. So lower the rim. They already got a smaller ball. Introduce 4-point shots, 10-point shots. All of that kind of stuff.
Get
like just
spicy with it.
Yeah, spice it up. But see, like this equality thing is one of the biggest tricks the devil ever pulled, man. And they got these people out here drinking this Kool-Aid. Y'all need to stop thinking. Most of y'all women, stop thinking we're not the same. Stop thinking that we should all be able to do things the same. We're not the same. And the last thing that I'll say, just to kind of clarify my math there, 30% of 15.14 million is 4,542,000. Okay, so that's how many women on average watch the NBA. 4,542,000. And then 75% of 231,000 is 173,250. So we're talking 4.5 million women now. We're not talking to everybody. We're just talking women here. 4.5 million women care about the NBA, watch the NBA, whereas 173,000 here, give or take, of all women watch the WNBA. So, like, you know, let's talk about what's real here and let's stop complaining about things that don't actually exist. Again, all relevant links will be in the description of this video. Shouts out to Bill Burr, you're a real one. Next up, we're going to talk about Kyler Murray. This was going on a lot in the sports world, man. Kyler Murray's contract. So the reason why this is kind of being talked about a lot is because there was an unprecedented stipulation in Kyler Murray's contract, which stipulated that he had to conduct independent study in order to be able to reap all the benefits of his contract and remain the starter and live out the full terms of his contract. So there's a clause that is labeled the independent study addendum. And he and basically this addendum means that material provided to him by the club in order to prepare for the club's next upcoming game, he has to study this stuff 4 hours a week. And he has to receive credit for completing his film study. And these are, I'm paraphrasing there. But, Kyler Murray has to show that he has personally studied the provided material in good faith. And people are going nuts about that because they believe it sets a bad precedent for future players, in particular quarterbacks, who are looking to, receive a big payday. And they don't want organizations following suit in the way that the Cardinals did in order to protect themselves against a potentially bad contract. And they gave him a lot of money, man. $230 million. That's a wallop of a contract. He, basically is making, at this point, I think he has the second or third highest contract in the league. I think Aaron Rodgers is still number one. Aaron Rodgers makes $50 million a year. Kyler Murray is either 2 or 3. I think it's Kyler Murray is, or Deshaun Watson is up there too because his is fully guaranteed. But in terms of how much annual per year, I think it's Aaron Rodgers 1, and then it may be Kyler Murray 2, Mahomes 3, and then Watson 4, or something like that. But basically, everybody's going crazy about this because it's never happened before. So, what did you make of Kyler Murray's independent study addendum in his contract?
I think I don't even know. Still some speculation here, but I'm pretty sure Kyler is a Gen Zer. I'm pretty sure he falls into the Gen Z bracket. I think this is very modern. I also heard part of the contract is, he's not allowed to be on his phone and stuff like that. So it has to be a solid, 4 hours. And this is kind of, you see it on Kyler's face. I think he loves football, but I think football loves Kyler more than Kyler loves football. And when it came to football and baseball, I think he liked baseball more. It's a lot of stuff, but follow on. I think he liked baseball more, but I think he saw football as the one where they would give him the platform, the endorsements, the all of that, the contract. I think he saw football as that kind of a lane for him. And I still think in both sports, man, I think he's just good at sports. And I don't want to say he doesn't care. I just think he likes other stuff outside of football. And when he was at Oklahoma, I would see it in his face. I thought he was going to play baseball so much I would see it in his face when he was at Oklahoma. I was like, oh, if he's torn between baseball and football, the way I see him carry himself on the football field, it looks like he doesn't want to be there. Then the same thing when, when adversity hits during the season, when you watching him play, he still has this nonchalant, I don't care, I don't want to be here kind of face. He gets real agitated real quick. It's not agitated that his teammates aren't following the game plan and buying into the culture. It's aggravated, like, and it's like, damn, Kyler, do you even want to be out there? So I think with him is definitely a passion, quote unquote, air quote issue. And I think that he's just more invested in just living a good life than being a good football player. So part of this contract was to make sure that he does his job. I think he's always good at doing his job, just running out there and running around and slinging it. That I don't really care to do this, but it's like, bro, you're a professional. So I think he really has to get into the space of, I'm a professional. I'm going to treat this as a professional. And as a professional, I have to do some homework. And I think that them putting that within the contract is just, edging him out there, getting him out of this because, and the reason why I brought up the generation thing is, I see this in a lot of these talented guys coming up now where they're not as invested in the game as previous generations were because of whatever reasons. And they're just there because they're just talented. And that happened in previous generations. But I think it's a lot more widespread with bigger stars. And they're just like, eh. So I think them putting that in the contract was them, of course, incentivizing him to do so. It's like a fail-safe thing. Like, hey, man, I don't know how else to motivate this guy. Let's put it in his contract kind of thing. So 4 hours a week isn't that bad. He can crush that in a day. So I really don't think it's that much to live up to. So I also think there's a bit of air of it where it's slightly overhyped, but it is one of those things where other quarterbacks aren't really told to do so. So how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I just feel like I don't think so. All of the sports shows were basically talking about how this can potentially establish a dangerous precedent. And, of course, there was a sizable percentage of people who brought in the race factor because their fear, I don't agree with this, but basically their fear is that, intellect and intellectual capacity. And this is, I'm not agreeing. I'm saying what they're saying. I don't agree with this, but they're saying that intellect and intellectual capacity has always been a way to keep Black quarterbacks from aspiring to get to the top and keeping them from having opportunities and keeping it. Intellectual capacity has always been a mechanism to bar Black quarterbacks from being given the big paydays and the big contracts. And so this can potentially establish a bad precedent because you can just start to issue studying addendums into the contract parameters of every Black quarterback as a way to substantiate why you do or don't want to pay a certain guy a certain amount of money. I don't agree with that. I think we're well past that. These teams are giving these Black quarterbacks opportunities left and right. So I just, that to me is a form of race baiting. I'm not surprised to see it. I didn't, I expected it. I wasn't shocked when they started bringing that up, but I think it's race baiting and it's just
a big stretch, bro.
It is, but that's what they did. And so they wanted to bring in the race factor as a way to just keep on talking about Black people being victims of racism. It's just something that we do nowadays, even when it's uncalled for. Yeah. I just kind of feel like so I bring that up to say I don't think that anyone needs to be concerned with this establishing any kind of precedent. I think that this is something that's unique unto Kyler Murray or anyone who is like him. He made a statement like last year or a couple of years ago where he basically said, "I've never been somebody who watches film or studies a lot, because I've always been blessed with an acumen to kind of get it on the go. And so I've always relied on it. And because I've always been able to rely on that, he called it a God-given gift. He said, because I've always been able to rely on this, I've never been big on study.
Yeah.
So like, you want me to pay you $300 million and I can't trust that you're going to be in the film room? Like, we keep trying to change stuff. Like, and we talked about the quarterback list a couple weeks ago, and everybody's all mad because Lamar Jackson was outside the top 10. And I think you and I were in agreement where we basically could tell that the way that they gave about making that list was they believed that a certain type of quarterback from a skill set standpoint is more likely than not to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And that's when and that's the way that lists like that are made. It's about who's going to be most likely to win the Super Bowl. And if you read off the names of every quarterback who won the Super Bowl in the last, I think I read it back to 2010, every quarterback, pretty much from a skill standpoint, with the exception of Russell Wilson, who many argue kind of was a supporting character behind the defense in the running game, played a certain kind of way and won the Super Bowl. So everybody's getting all mad because Lamar Jackson's outside the top 10 when the evidence and the history suggests that a particular type of skill set played at that position is most likely to win the Super Bowl. And so with Kyler Murray, I feel like a particular approach to preparation is more likely than not inherent in a quarterback being successful. And that approach involves film study and work ethic and studying preparation-wise. And so if the organization has any sort of concern that Kyler Murray would not be able to hold up his end of the bargain in that regard, then I guess they kind of owe it to themselves to protect themselves in the best way possible within that context. And from that standpoint, I don't know that I necessarily see anything wrong with it. Really, I just kind of feel like this stuff is simple. And if Kyler Murray was the type who gave the impression that he adequately prepared often enough, there would be no need for this type of stuff. And the only reason why it's in there is because the organization must feel as though they'd like for him to be the long-term future, hence why they gave him the deal in the first place. But they want to just know that he is doing the bare minimum. And in a lot of respects, film study and preparation, prior to the game and, leading up to the game is like a bare minimum requirement. That's pretty much all that it boils down to. And he is 100% a Gen Zer. He is like really big into gaming. So apparently when he's like, he's not one of those, he's not a guy who likes to go out. He's not really into that kind of thing. He prefers to just be at home gaming. And so, he has his gaming set up. I think he does Twitch a lot with some of the games that he plays. So yeah, he's into that. That's, this is the new generation stuff. And so, yeah, he's into that. And it's a new world that we're into, you know what I'm saying? But I just think at the end of the day, if the organization felt strongly enough that they didn't have to concern themselves with his level of preparation, they wouldn't have put that in there. They're just not looking to target these guys and withhold money from them. I don't believe that. I'm seeing too many of these dudes being given guaranteed contracts, $40, $50 million plus. And if you're doing your thing, you're doing your thing. And it ain't a race thing. Patrick Mahomes is black, and he makes the most money in the NFL. Or at the time that he signed his contract, he was the highest paid player. Lamar Jackson is probably going to sign a contract that surpasses Kyler Murray's. And Deshaun Watson has the biggest guaranteed contract in the history of the league. All these guys are black. Russell Wilson's contract is also pretty significant as well, which is why the Seahawks could never adequately put enough around him to compete in Seattle the last couple of years that he was there, because he was eating up so much of the cap because he had such a huge contract. So it's not about race. That's just race baiting. This is about, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, no one's going to say anything. So I suggest to Kyler Murray that you just satisfy your end of the bargain in that regard and be happy with the fact that you're putting $230 million in the bank.
Well, and yeah, and I think that pretty much summarizes it. I think to me the generational thing. I do agree that race baitish angle is a bit of a stretch. I mean, when they have to go so far around to bring around a point of how it's race related, it's like it's not race related at that point.
Yeah.
And so, but definitely when it comes to how I observe Kyler, I just look at him. He just plays backyard football. I think Skip Bayless says this about him too, but not in a derogatory way. I think he just says that he just goes out there and just slings it kind of thing. And he just goes, reads, sling, go read, sling. And man, if you studied on top of that, who knows what you would be,
Yeah.
Because the reason why Brady is who he is because he studies and he just gets particular, and he's nowhere near as athletic as you are. So if you just took, some time out, 25% of the time that Tom Brady spends, I would say at least 40, bro, to 50. And spend that kind of time in the study room and just, get into your job and your profession. I mean, the guy could be, MVP status every year if he does so. But I think him and his whole, I just get it out the mud and I get it how I live. And you can tell how he just running for his life every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just, he's just playing Texas backyard football. And it's just like, hey, man, you can't do this with these guys. You can now. Same message for Lamar. Man, I wouldn't looked at, after we did our video, I had looked at some Lamar highlights. I mean, my goodness. His running ability, some of the stuff he does already on wax, like already on film, you could just look back. If he retires, you can just look at his compilation now and go, my goodness, what an athlete. And just imagine if he just squares his shoulders and makes a sound throw, then we wouldn't be having these conversations either. So for Lamar, Kyler, or any other young up-and-coming just gifted quarterbacks, I really do wish they do take the time out to refine their game, to make it that much more sharper. But just this backyard 7-on-7 type of stuff, it dilutes the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's deeper than just whatever. It makes it harder to watch when you're out there running for your life and then just fling it cross body. Like, that's not football anymore. It's getting weird. So I don't have no problem with them putting that in there because apparently he wasn't doing it. So
exactly, that's the thing. They wouldn't put it in there if they felt comfortable with how much preparation he puts in. There'd be no need to add it. It's simple, And to Lamar's credit, I think Lamar probably puts in more preparation time than Kyler does.
Yeah, I would take so.
Which is why Lamar was able to win unanimous MVP. He did his thing that year. I don't think that that's necessarily going to pave the way to winning a Super Bowl. Although I will say this though, because I had to think about this. Like, so Lamar won MVP, and then and then they lost. Like, I think they went to the playoffs that year, lost in the first game. So like the knock on him is the way that they can't come from behind, and how his game isn't necessarily suited for coming from behind. But be that as it may, he puts in enough time to the point where he'll perform in such a way that he can be a unanimous MVP, which you can't take that away from the guy.
Right.
It's just, whether he's actually going to be able to put 2 and 2 together. And, to be fair to him, the Ravens were decimated by injury last year. So, let's see what happens with Lamar when they have their full complement of players on the roster, healthy and not hurt. And then he as well is also healthy and not injured. Because thus far we haven't necessarily seen that. Again, my speculation is that still won't get the Ravens to a Super Bowl. But in order, just to kind of be fair to Lamar, it is true that we have not seen that yet, where Lamar's been healthy and the roster's been healthy and what happens after that. But in terms of Kyler, yeah, if he put as much preparation in as Lamar does, who knows? But yeah, he is kind of just running around out there. And there's less of a reason for him to do that because he's on a team with weapons.
Right.
So like, you got a nuclear weapon of a receiver in Hopkins, and then you got a good number 2 in AJ Green, who when he was in his prime was elite. and then you got the running game, you got the defense. So the reason, I look at their roster and I say, why is he running that much with that roster? It maybe it's because he at times doesn't know what's going on out there, because he's not, as prepared as he should be.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing for these guys, man, that an NFL job is an afterthought. Like he literally made it to the NFL as all right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And like, damn, bro, like you're really good. And he's like, yeah, but whatever. And that's his whole thing. So hopefully he gets over that. I don't know, that's going to be kind of hard of a thing, but maybe he needs to grow out of that. He's still young, so he still has this whatever demeanor to about it. But yeah, man, hopefully he gets it together. So
yeah, facts. I think it's more easy to notice that in the NBA. Like in the NBA, it's more easy to see a guy who got to the league and then they fizzle away, and it's like, whatever happened to that guy? He didn't really have much of a career. Oh, he just really actually wasn't really good like that, because he was good enough to get to the league, but he wasn't good enough to do the things needed to sustain a career. Right. I think we see more of that in the NBA than we do or rather, I think it's more noticeable in the NBA than it is in the NFL. And maybe that's because I'll speak for myself. I follow the NBA more, so I'll remember far more, NBA bus, if you will, than I'll remember NFL bus. But it's just glaring to see that. I agree. It is kind of weird to see that. Mm-hmm. All right, next up, we're going to talk about comments made by Will.i.am. So, Will.i.am, pretty big in the music industry, big in front of, as an artist as well as behind the scenes. He's produced a lot of music. He's a big time producer, as well as being an artist in the Black Eyed Peas. He recently talked about why he wasn't a fan of the music of Tupac and Biggie. So he was recently on the Hip Hop Confessions show, and he was basically talking about why for him it really wasn't about Tupac and Biggie. He was not the biggest fans of their music. So we'll play that and then we'll talk about it.
That's my goal. If I had a top five, Rakim is one.
And because Tupac's dope. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I don't think he's dope. It's just the music
didn't speak
coming from. It spoke to the projects. My escape is De La Tribe out the projects. It took me out of the projects while I was still in the projects.
Mine too.
Right. Not only did it take me out of the projects, but it took me out of the projects physically, as far as like being able to like reach my dreams. That was my path out.
Right.
And it took me out of the projects as far as while I was in the projects, the worlds it painted for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept me safe while I was in the projects. Had I loved Tupac and Biggie while I was in the projects, I probably would have been stuck in the projects still.
Mm-hmm. So I felt like that last part was worth discussing, in particular, where he said he feels as though if he had been listening to Tupac and Biggie while being in the projects, that there's a chance that he wouldn't have left the projects. So, obviously several different angles we can go there. That might rub a lot of Tupac and Biggie worshipers the wrong way. I don't think it should. I think it's just an opinion you don't agree with. But nevertheless, people might find that egregious because, those two guys, in terms of the annals of hip hop, are held in very, very high esteem. A lot of people, in most people's top five all time, that completely subjective, ridiculous conversation that we like to have. Those two are in most people's top five ever, all time. So, Will.i.am talking about how he wasn't really on the Tupac Biggie vibe. It's going to stir up some conversation and rub some people the wrong way. But what was your first thought with that?
My first thought was, I can see that. It's Will.i.am.
Yeah.
Second thought was, let me see where he goes with this. third thought was I agree with everything he said. And the reason being is this was a time when I was at FAMU and I was being like a mentor or something like that to like the freshmen that were there. And we were having like every week we would have like meetings, group discussions or what have you. And we were talking about Tupac and how, you know, how real he was and how much he provided for the culture and all that good jazz. And there was a point where you know, somebody had brought up the music that he made, talking about, you know, I Get Around and this and that, and, you know, using you know, the B word to describe women and stuff like that. And we were having a real deep conversation. And then we brought up Tupac, and then somebody brought up that angle. And it was a kid, you know. And then he was like, you know, why do we hold that to a high esteem? Like, why are we praising and worshiping somebody that was calling women bitches? Yeah, he had songs where, you know, he would clean that up. But as far as an overall artist, he wasn't a perfect person. He was still young and he was finding himself, and he released music that was hurtful to our people. And so why as us in this room as intellectuals still worshiping this guy? And as a young person too, I was like, oh wow, it's pretty deep, kid. I didn't think of it that way. But ever since then, I've carried that line of thought of whenever we do talk about, you know, the Biggies and the whatevers. And the reason why I always sided with Tupac was because of the songs that he did actually, you know, provide substance to. And a lot of those songs resonated with me. And I wouldn't listen to the ones where they were commercial. But still, I get where Will.i.am is coming from, because Tupac intentionally was targeting a specific type of demographic with his music. Even when he was actually coming out with his conscious stuff, it was still an energy behind it that was coming from a place that Will.i.am didn't want to associate with. And I can completely respect that. And it was an angle that I wasn't coming from. But when I was listening to it, I could feel it and be within that. But what am I doing and what am I signing up for whenever I get into that vibration? Instead of talking about it in a more holistic light, in a more light where it was more communal and less I'm the man, you ain't, this and that, or what have you. That ego braggadocious type of rap where, you know, it's more open-minded. Like how he says, very valuable. He says, hey man, they took me out of the projects before I even got out of the projects. And so, and from a person like myself who didn't grow up in the projects or whatever, I understand where he's coming from, in the sense of when I listen to certain type of music, you know, from these artists that I'm being told that, hey man, this is the Hot Boys, you got to listen to this. Or hey, this is that, you got to listen to this. This is DMX, you got to listen to this. And while I'm sitting in comfort and safety, bullets are flying in my living room because I'm listening to these guys talking about bullets flying in their living room and how they got to get the next jug and how they got to do this and do that. And now my mind is in the trenches, and I've never been there. So long story short, Will.i.am is basically getting to the point to where we talk about on numerous occasions in here of how music can sway somebody's reality. And so he doesn't subscribe to just, hey, Pepsi or Coke. Well, why do I have to drink soda? You know, I'd rather drink 100% juice. Why you keep limiting it to these choices? So I agree with everything he had to say. And I think more people need to speak up on this, because why is it just Pepsi or Coke? There's plenty of options out there, plenty of great lyricists and plenty of great guys who contributed to the culture outside of these two individuals. So what do you say?
Yeah, I hear you. And, you know, why not 100% juice? Also, you know, why not different forms of TV shows and movies too, right? Why not different, you know, options for, you know, streaming and whatnot? It kind of all goes hand in hand. So this conversation informs me on the difference between music and other forms of entertainment, especially when we're talking about music that speaks directly to the Black population. So a lot of people like to, whenever the content of music is being defended, one of the things that you'll always hear from people who err on the side of the music is, well, what about these movies? Why are we, if the music is so influential, why is it that we can make all of these movies and no one is attacking the movies or the directors or the actors? Why are we always attacking rappers? Like, people really do love to jump to the defense of these, hip hop artists and these rappers and stuff. And the difference is, the reason why music resonates and movies don't is because there is a discernible difference in terms of the fact that things like shows and movies are fictional portrayals. There are characters involved in those that are more easily identifiable. So in a movie, it's going to be, Morgan Freeman plays such and such, or Denzel Washington plays such and such, or whomever, Anthony Anderson, whatever actor you want to think of. Kevin Hart is playing this character, but there is an intrinsic understanding that that is a fictional portrayal of something. It's not a real thing taking place.
Right.
Whereas when it comes to the music, Tupac is playing Tupac. Biggie is playing Biggie. They are, for all intents and purposes, playing themselves. And so the era of realism allows for people to subconsciously glean the content as reality and not as fiction. That's what makes it different. So movies and shows are fiction, whereas music, for a lot of people who consume the content, is reality. And where an individual like Will.i.am was able to benefit was his consumption of music was, from what I can tell based upon these talking points, very much the same thing as his consumption of other forms of entertainment, which is I consume this content as a form of escapism. So I listen to music for the purposes of taking me away from here mentally, not helping me cope with my circumstance. And I think a lot of us as Black people especially listen to this music because we believe that it allows us to cope with our circumstance, and not only cope with it, but allows us to ingratiate ourselves further with it and lean into it from the standpoint of emulating behavior, because if they're doing it, then it gives me it gives me a de facto compliance to also do it myself. And Will.i.am doesn't ascribe to that. He, throughout his youth, listened to music in the same way that he probably watched movies or TV shows. He was probably a guy who was into comic books and other forms of media as well. And those are things that people consume as a form of escape, not as a form of relishing in the reality, or rather languishing in the reality that I'm in. And so, I relate to that. And I respect him for it. And what I don't want to see is people disrespecting his point of view because they feel as though it's not authentic to the true Black experience. Because as we've talked about on several occasions, what does that even mean? Why does it have to be Pepsi or Coke? Why can't it be juice, as you articulated? I think that's 100% valid. I applaud him for being able to say that, because a lot of people in his position will probably bend the knee, and even though they didn't mean to, talk about how Biggie and Tupac meant all the world to them. And, I'm glad that he was someone who didn't feel bullied by the social climate, especially in the industry that he's in, and the way that he's made a living, that he didn't feel bullied to express those sentiments, but rather felt comfortable speaking honestly and earnestly, because there are more than one ways to skin a cat. And for the record, I think more of us should be consuming this music stuff as a form of escape, entertainment. Like, you should listen to these artists, these rappers. You should be listening to them the same way that you go to the movie theater to watch some movie, which is, it ain't real. It's entertainment. Filter through it things that can be applicable to your life in a positive way, and get rid of all the stuff that can sort of cause you to be influenced, by negative propaganda. But not enough of us do that There's a deeper reason for that. Obviously, there's various other socioeconomic factors that go into why so many of us consume the content in that way. But, you know, I said kudos to him for expressing that, because as an intellectual, it would make sense that he would consume the music in that way, even if he is talking about artists as influential and big as Pac and Big.
Yeah, and honestly, when him saying that stuff, it explained why he made the music that he did make, because he made stuff that people classify as pop music. But now that I think about it, after watching what he had to say, all his stuff was, in air quotes, feel good music. So nothing in there, anything that came from him was always up spirited, upbeat, and, you know, trying to get people in a good mood. So I can see why he makes music like that, because of how he feels what music should do for people. And he understands the power of music and the vibrations that it can put someone in. Me personally, I like to listen to what people call trap music and stuff like that, is because I found it interesting how someone can articulate their life so detailed, where I can listen to whatever they're going through and I can go, you know what? That explains a lot. Also, I see stuff kind of like that go on around me. I never could explain what that was, but hearing it from like this in this song, that actually kind of make sense. And then I would also hear from people who actually live that life a lot more closer to that lifestyle than me. They would vouch for certain artists, and then I would listen to those artists and I would hear how detailed they were, just explaining what's going on. And one of my favorites was Bankroll. I love Bankroll Fresh. But at the same time, he was so good at the details. I was like, bro, we don't need you rapping about this. We need you rapping about something else, because the way that he could, I mean, everything that he would just put into a song. I mean, I'm literally right there with him. And while I was a fan of what he was doing, I was also afraid of what he was doing, because I know that somebody that actually has access to that lifestyle is listening to him and being further influenced.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a wild thing whenever I run across somebody who is so gifted at coming up with this music that's actually more detrimental for our people than it is positive. And so, you know, unfortunately, Bankroll passed, but it's still a thing where, you know, just listening to him and his abilities, I get lost in the art of it. And then while listening to the art of it, certain things I'm furnishing my room with trap rap. So everything that I see is from the music I hear. And I don't have to bust a jug. I don't have to do that. But now that's in my reality. So when somebody tries to finesse me, it's something that it's a vibration that I put myself into. And so if we choose to listen to more high frequency music, then at that point we will have a more high frequency existence and a more high frequency, you know, exchange in life, versus having these low vibrational, I'm just talking about my circumstances. I'm just talking about my circumstances. And this is like, hey, if you just keep talking about your circumstances, then you're gonna stay in those circumstances. So just like how he said, if the music if the music is made for that type of energy, like the projects or whatever, then I'm going to stay in the projects.
Yeah.
So we have to listen to something that motivates, that pushes ahead. It's kind of one of those things where if you're not moving forward, you're automatically moving backwards. So if you're articulating your current circumstances, you're naturally moving backwards as a people. So in order to make more high frequency music, if you do decide to talk about your current circumstances, you have to talk about them in a way where it elevates and you uplift out of it, where you're not just always talking about, yeah, this is what's going on next to me, this is what's going on next to me, because actually you're just ensuring another generation of confusion and the same perpetual cycles of mass incarceration, unnecessary death in the streets, kids joining gangs, and all this other madness that's going on. So I agree with Will.i.am. I don't know if I'm going to listen to a Will.i.am song after this still, but I am more of a fan of him as a person because I think it takes a brave person to come out his mouth like that on a hip hop platform to say that about the pantheon of rap gods. So
literally, yeah, literal rap gods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just you know, I agree that I felt as though I think it's a good point when you say that he made music. The way that he made music was in the same way that he approached the act of listening to music, which is uplifting, a form of escape, something that's going to help you feel better about your situation as opposed to something that's going to cause you to languish in it. I just think that there's a delicate balance. And, you know, some of the older generations of artists struck this balance more effectively than, in my opinion, current artists do, which is why sometimes I speculate that we've gone backwards with a lot of this stuff. I feel like artists who were active when we were coming up, they made music, but they also evolved as human beings as they evolved in their careers, to the point in which every project that they made didn't sound exactly like the previous one that they made. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you're 10 years in and you're living an opulent lifestyle, you shouldn't be talking about murder, death, kill all the time anymore. So even if that was once your reality, not making music like that doesn't necessarily mean that you are now no longer authentic. It just means that there is a natural progression that all human beings experience. And we should all embrace the idea of that. And so the more people who have access directly to that lifestyle, as you put it, can observe a particular artist evolving, then I think the greater the likelihood that they themselves will embrace the idea of evolving.
I think, and I hear that, I think so Jeezy, for instance, so Jeezy tried to do this. So Jeezy tried to make, it's not, I can't help that he's not good at it. Whoops, sorry. But he tried to make music outside of him talking about bricks. And he was actually trying to, and it didn't work.
Well, he just wasn't good enough.
That's what I'm saying.
He just wasn't good enough.
That's
well,
fair.
I mean, but Jeezy just wasn't good enough to make the transition.
That's fair. But he tried. And he went right back to it. But that's fair.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. I just don't think that he had the talent to be able to make the transition successfully.
I agree.
But for every one Jeezy, you have another Jay-Z or Nas. And they were able to do it successfully. And I know I'm dating myself, but that's the point that I'm making, is that I think you see that more readily in previous generations of artists, as opposed to artists these days who they are a flash in the pan and they hit their lick. And obviously they are, number one, they're unwilling to transition. They don't want to. And number two, and because they don't want to transition, they don't have the capacity to learn how to transition. And so once they hit their lick and they're hot for a few years, they've disappeared and they're no longer relevant on the music scene. So, you know, at least Jeezy was able to sustain what he did over the course of several years and several albums before it finally came to a head for him. But nowadays, a lot of guys can't even do that. And by album number 2 or 3, it's already a wrap for them. They're already done. I don't even know, like, where is OJ the Juice Man and Fetty Wap right now? You know, and they were doing their thing for a good little minute here or there, for maybe a year or two. Ain't heard from them since. And that's because they just, I don't know what it is, but I feel like, you know, newer generations just simply lack the capacity to make that transition. And it's because they're unwilling to do so, first and foremost. And because you don't want to do it, obviously you're not going to take the time to learn how to do it. But, you know, the blueprint is out, and other guys have figured out how to do it. There's a way, and it's helpful. And I think Will.i.am speaks to that. And so I think for every Jeezy, there's another Like I said, I mentioned Jay-Z and Nas. Fabulous, you know, he's an older guy, and he's still great at what he does. In my opinion, lyrically at least, Fabulous is still somebody who will probably eat almost any rapper today, not named Jay-Z, Nas, or somebody else you want to throw in there who's really good, like Kendrick or Pusha T or somebody like that, J. Cole. And he's not doing the I'm in the streets smashing all these girls and selling all these bricks music the way he was when he put out his first album in 2001. So like there's ways to go about doing it. I just think that the general acumen of today's artists is significantly less than what it used to be, which is why we see less of it and why we have so many people in our communities languishing in these realities, because they don't really have any alternatives to look to, because it's a formula that's being repeated. And, you know, there aren't enough Will.i.ams who are sitting in the neighborhood saying, I listen to my music for escape, not for a confirmation of my reality.
That's very fair. And real quick, I'll just say that when it comes to flow, cadence, ability to just captivate you with the punchline, the setup, the everything, Biggie wins that hands down.
Sure.
Hands down. Unparalleled. I mean, it was one I ran across a freestyle probably about a couple months ago, and it sounded like it was recorded last week, of how his timing was. And the shit was made in like 92. It was like just ridiculous. Yeah. So Biggie, I always gave that to him, still will. Just nobody can top that. Now, when it comes to substance, ability to convey heartfelt realities, Tupac, hands down. Again, it's another hands. I get why it's the Pepsi Coke debate, you know, and honestly, you know, whoever decides to lean on whatever side, yeah, I know why they picked that. But to me, as artists, I do put them high up on my list. It might be mind control, but I put them high on my list. They're not on my favorites list. My favorites list is not who I think is the most skilled. You know what I'm saying? So that's a difference.
Yeah,
but my favorite list doesn't even have them in my 5.
Yeah,
because it's not my favorite. I don't listen to them all day long.
Right.
But as far as you know, their skills, as far as at the time in which they were doing it, and that's the other part too. It was kind of like, hey man, I was there when Wilt was dropping 50, 60 a night, so I can remember that and I can see that, and it's like, hey, I remember how that was, and shit was amazing. So I still put them up high on my list, but they're not on my favorites list. They're just not. You know, I have some real reserved people that are more substance based than the both of them. So,
yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, that's perfectly fair. I'm inclined to agree with all of that. I wasn't really a big and look, man, like Tupac. Okay, so Tupac died in '96. I was like 9 when Tupac died. Realistically, Tupac is before my time. Both of them. They're in the previous generation. Same thing with Biggie. Biggie died January 20 in '97, something like that. So like I was like 9 and 10 years old when those guys were killed. That's really before my time. All I could do was look at what they did in retrospect. But yeah, I think that that's fair. Listening to the way Biggie used to rap, I kind of feel like Biggie was a prodigy in terms of ability. I think that had he had a full career, he only made 2 albums. And in the 2 albums he made, he has bars that still can't be touched by anybody. So I just think that he was a prodigy from an ability standpoint. Yeah. And Tupac was more of a galvanizer. Tupac was more of a get behind my message. Yeah, I'm going to spur you into action type thing, which, you know, it depends on what you listen to music for, which is going to determine who you put higher over the other. But yeah, I agree. I don't put either of them, me personally. Neither one of them is like up there for me. But, you know, when you say what you say, the reason why you're able to say that is because you have the filter, which allows you to listen to this music without being conditioned to believe that you have an obligation to emulate the behavior of the music. And so you're able to say, I listen to, you know, Trap this or Bankroll Fresh that, and yet here you stand speaking on it the way that you do. Most of us do not have that filter. And I think that the presence of individuals talking like Will.i.am gives somebody the opportunity to develop their own filter, I think. And so that's why I think that there's value in somebody like him speaking the way that he speaks. And so I appreciate that. But enough of that grandstanding, all that righteous indignation. That's going to do it for our video for this week, man. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you are watching this video on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button so that you can get the notification for all new content posted to the channel. Please hit this like button on this video because it is free. Again, all relevant links to all references made, as well as to content that we do not put directly in the video, whether it's other clips or, you know, other data and facts, data, statistics, stuff like that. I will include that in the description of this video so that you can reference those upon further viewing. You can follow me on Instagram at JVWins, JVWINS. And you can also follow the Constant Approach page on Instagram at ConApproach, CONAPPROACH. For the time being, if you are watching this on Facebook, hit the like button, hit share button, and definitely like the page. I certainly appreciate it. I am still giving consideration to shutting down Facebook because Meta is actively engaging in content censorship. So just, you know, be aware of that because it's a very real possibility. I am not a fan of what they are doing. But until next time, I certainly appreciate you supporting logical content.
Yes, sir. And the name is Dogon SS. You can find me on Instagram at Dogon_SS or on YouTube at Dogon SS or any other social media platform as Dogon SS or Dogon_SS. All right. So like, subscribe, make sure you do that. And like my dog JV Win says, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel, man.
Yeah.
You know, all right. Like these videos, man, because we be going in. All right. But as I always say, man, keep it calm, keep it chill, keep it player. Don't be too high, don't be too low, man. Stay neutral, bro. Don't let nobody get you out of pocket, man. Stay balanced and stay on your pivot. You know what I'm saying? Until next time, y'all.
Yeah. We signing off, man. Guys, stop being so bitch made. Don't be slaves to vagina, please. Please. You're killing us. But until next time, another Constant Approach video in the books. We'll see you later. Peace.